So what's my story? Why am I doing this? Why am I talking about all this stuff? All right, well, about 2 years ago, I reached a breaking point in my life. I've traditionally been just an overthinker, just constantly overthinking, um, ruminating about the past and the future, so I've dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety. So the thing that I was thinking about that really triggered this low point in my life was, what do I do with my life? I've never really known. Growing up, I never had this one thing that, what I wanted to do. And, I had so much pressure on myself. Like, what am I doing? Where do I go? Like, what's my purpose? And my mind was just going in all these different directions, and it was getting to be too much. And so my mind's just like nonstop at this point. And I started questioning like everything. Like I was getting into a full-blown like existential crisis. I'm like, what's the purpose of anything? Like, what's the meaning of all of this? So I started questioning everything, and the thought popped into my head, what is free will? Do we have free will? And like I normally do, if I have a question, I'll just like Google it. Just like, what does Google have to say about that? So I Googled it, and I came across this guy, Sam Harris. He's kind of like a famous philosopher. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he has like a podcast, and he has like a meditation app. He's a big proponent of meditation. I really like him. But I came across his video on YouTube. He had like an hour-long lecture talking about free will. And I won't go too into it, but essentially he was saying that our idea of free will, the idea that we have that, we're in complete control of our lives, and that we have the complete ability to make the choices in our life is an illusion. And my understanding of free will has definitely grown, but essentially the idea that you are just in complete control doesn't really make sense, because he used this as an example. You don't even choose the next thought that pops into your head, right? Like if you've ever meditated, or just observed yourself, like it just happens, right? Your next thought just kind of like pops into your head. It's not like you're consciously choosing it. And I think he even said, like, in order to choose your thoughts, you would have to think them before you think them, right? But that's not how it works. A thought just pops into our head. It's not like a conscious choice. And he was also talking about, we don't even control everything that has ultimately shaped us, right? So you didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the time period that you grew up in, the culture that you grew up in, the society that you grew up in. You didn't choose your genetics, your DNA. Just like you're kind of just plopped here from birth, and you kind of have to work with what you're given, right? Like you have all of these things around you that are definitely influencing you, but you don't get to choose those things that ultimately are like shaping you, right? I mean, how often do you see kids that are very similar to their parents, right? Like the same like ideologies, the same beliefs, the same, like sometimes it's the same interests and personalities in some ways. But it's like those are all shaping us. Anyway, I'm getting into free will now. But the point is, it didn't make, I would definitely, if you're interested in this, go watch it. It's definitely a really good perspective. It made so much sense to me. But yeah, basically you had this really good argument, and a lot of it it's like he articulated something that I had already kind of discovered for myself, or I'd already kind of been aware of, but he just kind of brought it full circle. Like he put all the pieces together, and it just completely blew my mind. And I'm like, whoa, this idea of like free will that we're all kind of like living living our lives with doesn't really make sense. And with that, he offered another approach to, to dealing with people, because you realize that people in a way are just the kind of the product of their environment and everything that's shaped them, and their DNA and everything. They're kind of the culmination of that, and they're not even always consciously aware of that influence that's on them. With criminals, or people that are just deemed crazy, like they're just, they're hospitalized for something, whatever. You realize that they didn't ultimately like choose to be like that. Like, who would really choose to be, who would choose to live this life of chaos and suffering if they really had just a choice like that? Like, the way life works, it's not like that. You don't have just the snap of the finger. You can make any choice and be whoever you want at any moment. There are so many things shaping and influencing you that, there's a lot of momentum there, and you really have to be aware of all of that if you want to have any kind of degree of free will, if that makes sense. But basically, it blew my mind, because I realized that the way I'd been living my life and everything that I believed didn't necessarily line up with this new thing that made a lot of sense to me. And so I couldn't ignore that. And so I had an internal struggle. I'm like, I don't know what to believe anymore. Like, I don't know what's real anymore, because it's like, it was I don't know who I am, because I'm like, this new way that made sense didn't line up with all of my old beliefs and who I thought I was. And so I was kind of like nihilistic for a few days. It didn't last too long, but I was basically just like, we don't have free will. This doesn't matter. Just everything's gonna happen the way it happens. Who cares? Whatever. I was just like, I had this really downward perspective, like, just like, I don't know. I was just like kind of checked out of life. And so this was kind of at the forefront, just like, I don't know, where do I go from here? What's the point of life? I was still trying to like figure it all out and like figure out what to do. And my mind was still racing, and I was suffering so much because of it. And I reached a point where I just realized, like, you know what? I don't know the answers to everything. I don't know the meaning to life. I don't know if I ever will. But I do know that I'm here right now. I'm alive right now. I don't know when I'm going to die. So I might as well just let go and just live it. I was just like, I just want to live life and be happy, and just, whatever happens, happens. And so that shut my mind up finally. And ever since that moment, I've been so much more happy, so much more peaceful than I've ever been before. Like, I still, have ups and downs, of course, but not to the same level as I did before. And I'm never really stuck in a low that long. But basically, after that moment, I was so happy. I wasn't stuck in my head anymore. I wrote down everything that I believed now. I wrote down the way I wanted to live my life and all the beliefs that align with that and everything. And I even wrote down like a bunch of affirmations. And so I had this huge list that I would just read myself. every morning, just because I was like, you know what, this is the way I want to live my life moving forward, and I don't want to forget it. Like, I want this to be my life, because I'm like, I never lived like this before, and I felt amazing. And I told my mom, and like, you know, where I was at now, and what I was believing. And she's like, you know what you're saying sounds a lot like this book, The Four Agreements. And so I got the book, and I couldn't put it down. I read it like 5 times. I got all of his other books, Don Miguel Ruiz. He has quite a few books. They're pretty good, honestly. I'm not biased or anything. And so I read through all of his books, and I just couldn't put it down. Basically, I realized that I came to like the same conclusions that this guy came to. I realized that there's another way to live life that we're not always aware of. We don't even really know it's a possibility much of the time, because we're so just like in our own world, doing our own thing, that, you know, we think that what we're doing is like the correct thing, or this is the only thing, or whatever. But so I realized there was another way of life, and I started looking for more books like this guy, and I realized this is a whole thing, you know. Eckhart Tolle, I came across his books, Power of Now, which I feel like went the most in depth with what was, you know, what I was experiencing, and, you know, where I'm at now with life. There's plenty of other books. Untethered Soul was another really good book that I read, and I don't know if you've heard of the philosopher Alan Watts from like the 60s. He speaks about this sort of stuff. Really good. But basically, you know, there's many different names for it, you know, spiritual awakening, enlightenment, or just personal freedom, whatever. It's just a way to live in which you're not just constantly suffering, and you're not, you know, you're not just at the mercy of every thought and emotion and event, or, you know, things that trigger you. You know, you're not just being tugged left and right, just riding this roller coaster. You're so much more stable, so much more peaceful, so much more calm. You're kind of like right here, you know, not like, it's a huge difference. Obviously, I still have some lows and highs, but it's like a surfer riding a wave is like how it used to be. Obviously, that's a good experience, but I don't know how to describe this. It's like, instead of being right in the fray, where it's like, it's so real and just like, this is your life, it's kind of like you're hovering above the surfer, and, you know, you're not quite in the fray as much. You know, there's some peace, there's some distance. You know, you can see the waves crashing and, you know, doing their chaos, but it's like, it doesn't have as much of an influence in your internal state, I guess, if that makes sense. So anyway, his stuff helped me the most. Eckhart Tolle, his YouTube videos and his books, because he really goes into it and really breaks it down. Basically, they're all saying, all of these spiritual, you know, teachers and gurus and self-help people, they're basically just pointing to the same basic idea. You know, they obviously have their own ways of going about it, but basically the possibility of living in a completely different way that is also so much more peaceful and so much more free. You're kind of more in line with your true self, and, you know, you're able to have so much more understanding, and you're kind of just more in line with life, if that makes sense. You're more just like a bird or a cat or just a wild animal. You know, they're just they're just living life. You know, they're just part of it. They're not sitting there in their, you know, a bear's not sitting in his cave, sitting there like ruminating on the future and the past and just getting his feelings hurt and just like, you know, he doesn't have this internal struggle. I mean, I'm assuming, because I don't think they can think like we do. But the basic idea is that we have all of these beliefs and emotions and thoughts that are basically controlling us. Like we're basically slaves to all of this, or most of our lives. And it's causing all of this suffering within us. You know, we're just being pulled left and right and just on this roller coaster. And there's a way out. There's a way to, it's possible to lift that burden. And so I really started like reading these books, studying them, practicing them for myself. And ever since then, my life's been just like day and night. Like I've been so much happier, so much more peaceful. I don't get like triggered so easily. You know, I'm able to use my mind so much more effectively, and I'm able to think so much more clearly, because it's not like it's not just nonstop just controlling me, you know. It doesn't have that same grip, and neither does my emotions. And so I feel like I've, you know, after a couple years of really practicing and trying to live these, you know, these teachings and stuff, I feel like I've really gotten to a point where I have a pretty good understanding of it all. And I feel like I really want to help other people, you know, get to a similar place, or at least just help them where they're at, you know. If anything that I've learned, and if there's anything about, you know, the way I'm living and, you know, what's helped me, if that can help anyone else, you know, and if I can help anyone else, you know, live a happier, healthier, more peaceful life, I'm all for it. Like I'm down. I know this is a really deep deep subject. I know it's like, might be like, I don't know, it might just be so mind-blowingly deep and just like maybe even hard to comprehend, but it's like, I don't know, this has been my life for the last couple years, so, you know, I'm just gonna embrace it. And, you know, if I can help anyone live a happier, healthier, peaceful life, like I'm down for it. So yeah, basically that's my goal, is I want to make these videos and, you know, give my understanding, give my take on life and what's happening here, and how to live more peacefully, more free. And if it doesn't make sense to you, or it doesn't, you know, you don't feel drawn to what I'm talking about at all, you know, if it's just like, it doesn't seem helpful to you at all, like, I don't care. Just, if there's anyone that is on board with what I'm saying, and, you know, you feel like this sort of stuff could help you, I'm here to help. So yeah, that's kind of just the essence of what I'm trying to get across. So I had this journey, and I really want to help people in their journey, and, you know, live the best life that they can. So yeah.